Good morning. It's March 18th, 2022, Friday. Welcome to Triggered. I'm Corey Morgan. I'm feeling pretty good today. St. Patrick's Day, those are the days I sometimes miss drinking a little, getting out, indulging with everybody else. But then when it's the day after and I don't have a hangover, and I know a lot of people are enjoying a hangover right now, I'm happy I don't drink any longer. Either way, I hope your hangovers are somewhat manageable today. I'll try not to speak any more loudly than I usually do. Of all observances that come on certain days of the week, that's one of the ones that should just be set, like the second or third Friday of every, or Saturday, of every March or something like that. Because, these midweek ones make it difficult for such an important drinking observance. So either way, this show is going to be coming to you live every day for those who are on for the first time, 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard, Monday to Friday, except on holidays. And we break in sometimes with special news events and things like that. Comments, of course, always welcome. Good to see you all in the scroll over there chatting. It's the good thing about being live. We can interact. I try to get comments out to the guests when I can, questions, things like that. Debate with each other. Just try to keep everything civil when you can. We can be heated, we can be emotional, but we don't have to be too nasty to each other if we don't have to. So I got a few guests on today, 3 of them lined up. Wildrose Independence Party leader Paul Hinman. Of course, the by-election ended last week. We're going to talk about what he felt about the campaign, how it went, and where he plans to go forward. Then I'm going to talk to Calgary City Councillor Dan McLean. We're looking to be going into a pretty lively weekend of protests, counter-protests. Police are threatening all sorts of interesting kind of stuff going on coming into this Saturday. So talking to a city councillor on what they're planning or hoping to do. There's not much they can do as a council, but they sure can talk a pretty big game. And Dan McLean, this will be his first time on the show. He's one of the few conservatives on city council, so it'll be interesting to talk to him in general. And then a quick check-in at the end with Canadian Taxpayers Federation Alberta Director Kevin Lacey. The debt clock is on tour, the new one with the $1 trillion number on it to be able to cover Canada's massive and growing debt. Plus, we'll just get a quick update on Alberta finances and such from him. So, let me get on to what I'm about. I do it for you guys, It's an act of supreme self-sacrifice. I suffer daily to do something on your behalf so you don't have to. It's agonizing, but it has to be done. And I've selflessly taken that task on of monitoring what the legacy media is reporting and reporting it back to you without their bias filtration. I'll just have my own bias filtration on, but I am an opinion show. Now, some folks would just say, just ignore them. And I wish I could, but thanks to government subsidy programs, the mainstream media won't die its natural financial death, the one that they so well deserve. So if I'm stuck paying for these guys, I might as well keep an eye on them. Now, despite the subsidies, most of our mainstream outlets are still losing money at an incredible rate as they continue to cut back and contract and lay off staff. Viewership and readership numbers are swirling the toilet as well. Seems the more highly subsidized an outlet is, actually, the faster their viewership and readership numbers drop. CBC, of course, is the best example. The CBC News, I think for the city of Calgary with 1.2 or 1.2, was it 1.4 million? I'm not sure. Well over 1 million people. And I believe it's something like 5,000 of them tune into the CBC News. That's our mother corp. As with anything, when the government gets involved in something that should be the realm of private industry, the quality of whatever they get their fingers into drops. And media is no exception. The more the state pours in, the worse the product that comes out, and the faster that people flee from it. Canada's establishment media outlets outright embarrass themselves with their coverage of the Truckers for Freedom convoy protests. The bias was outright repugnant, and it put people off in droves. Now, on the flip side, it was good for alternative outlets. People no longer have to rely on a handful of outlets in order to get their information. The digital world has allowed alternative media sources to flourish. The growth we've been experiencing at the Western Standard has been nothing shy of explosive. Our biggest challenges lately have been in keeping up with the new staff and office moves and organization as we expand like that. And much of that is, of course, is due to our putting out high-quality coverage. People check us out, realize what we offer, they subscribe, and they stay. The mainstream media, though, has certainly made our job easier for us. It's almost as if they're trying to drive people towards alternative outlets. Well, either way, enough patting ourselves on the back. I'll get to what's got me triggered as I consumed some mainstream coverage in the last 12 hours. To start with was the usual fear-mongering CTV coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. Alberta's chief medical officer, Hinshaw, addressed the emergence of a potential new COVID variant and said at this time it's of little concern. There, should be all you need to say. But no, the CTV gave her a short soundbite and then went and sought out some obscure microbiologist and gave her a few minutes to explain why this latest variant is of huge concern and we should be frightened and how we can look forward to the return of restrictions. This wasn't a matter of point counterpoint. It It wasn't them seeking balance. It was a clear effort to maintain fear. They had to look deep and far to find somebody to put a negative spin on what's basically a positive pandemic statement, but they managed. We saw that before as they do streeters, after Alberta dropped the masking and vaccine passport regulations. Somehow, in interviewing a number of people on the street, every single one of them was frightened and vowed to keep wearing masks despite the lack of legislation requiring it. Not a single person could be found saying, hey, I love this and I'm going to be enjoying mask-free living. I love going out to bars and businesses without having to show a passport. Astounding. Amazing how they only found people who like masks and vaccine passports. Legacy media loves this pandemic, and they want to make sure we remain fearful no matter how good things are actually beginning to look. People are seeing through it. And the media gets irresponsible to the point of dangerous when it comes to covering protests. Their slanted reporting inflames demonstrators and increases the chance of a conflict when it didn't need to happen. We see it as they focus on tiny groups of extreme people while ignoring a massive moderate majority at demonstrations. In Calgary, ongoing protests have led to increased tensions in the Beltline area of downtown. It's a residential zone, and some people who live down there are getting tired of the weekly disruptions, and that's fair enough. The evolution in the language of the media coverage as they line up against these protesters, though, has been very telling. I mean, at first, the media pretty much didn't even cover these protests, despite there being thousands of people in attendance. I mean, the Western Standard was down there. We live streamed those things. It was news. It wasn't a matter of bias. When something that big happens, we cover it. Now, the media, now they're referring to them. They do see them there, but they call them the so-called freedom protesters. What's with this so-called thing? Did the media say so-called BLM protests, so-called Occupy, or so-called I'll No More when they protested? Was it the so-called Wet'suwet'en protesters when they blocked roads? Of course not. Yet in this case with these peaceful protests in Calgary, the media won't even fairly acknowledge what they call themselves. Now, Calgary's police chief has switched, and he's calling them anti-democracy protesters. I expect the media will follow in suit with them soon. Now, on the way this morning, legacy media hit a new low. So there have been counter-protesters showing up the last couple of demonstrations. They're a small but belligerent group. Calgary's police chief even called them out as professional protesters who didn't represent the locals in the Beltline. The police were forced to push these counter-protesters out of the way last weekend because they were blocking the thousands of other demonstrators on their march, and they were trying to start a conflict with them. Well, on the radio, the newsreader didn't even refer to them now as being counter-protesters, just said residents. Yes, residents apparently lined up and blocked the demonstrators. Residents were pushed back by the police. That's the term he used. Police pushed back residents. They were counter-protesters. They showed up at a protest to push back on one. Call it what it is. But the media is trying to create an impression that it's predominantly residents who are pushing back and that it can't even be called a counter-protest. Why such an effort to change language to benefit one side in an issue that clearly has two sides? Again, there's no doubt there's many residents down there who are fed up with the marchers. But let's not pretend that the people going down there trying to provoke a conflict with the marchers are representative of the residents down there. I'm going to be going down to observe the protests this weekend. Police have asked both the protesters and counter-protesters to stay home. Yes, not residents, counter-protesters. Both groups have told the police to get stuffed. They're going down there. In fact, probably in higher numbers than they would have in the first place. I hope there won't be a conflict. I really don't, but I suspect there might be. And when conflict occurs at these sorts of events, it always comes down to a he said, she said sort of scenario when it comes to determine who started it. The only way I'm going to be confident in knowing what happened will be going down there myself and seeing it. I don't want to see a conflict. But if it does break out, I'm going to be calling out the instigators, whether it's the freedom protesters who started it, the counter protesters, or the police. It can get pretty hectic, but I'm going to get a first-hand account because that's the only way I can believe it. We already know where the legacy media is going to land on it. I mean, they won't let the residents started it. If things go poorly, though, I blame some of this on the mainstream media themselves. It's been disrespected pigeonholing of demonstrators that's led to many of them feeling desperate and out of options to express themselves. Just listening to people with an honest ear can help defuse a lot of rage. Trudeau certainly could have done so in Ottawa, and he never did. So I'm going to be going this weekend, hoping for the best, but planning for the worst. Somebody has to cover it, honestly, and we're going to have other standard reporters there as well. The mainstream media, if they might be recoverable if they would just look within and realize why people are leaving them, but they can't do it. All they'll do is grovel for more and more subsidies and then pander to the government that subsidizes them with slanted coverage further, which again hastens the demise of what I think is an institution now that's rotten to the core anyway. That's what's got me going today, guys. And yes, it's quite something else. So I'm going to be checking in now with the rest of the news we got with Eva Sidik, our Calgary reporter, has been promoted into an office position now. So we're going to get her on the air before she leaves the full-time media things. So let's bring her in and see what's going on there.
Hi, Corey.
Hey there, how's it going?
Good, good. Don't discredit me from being a reporter, though. I'm still going to be reporting, even with my new position.
Sorry, I got to write something here. Okay, I know that, but we've got to give you your hard time on the way in. I mean, you're even getting an office. I have to share an office, a space with Dave. I mean, we stare at each other all day, no wall, nothing in between. And somehow you, the intern, the new person, gets an office in the corner. Yeah, I'm going to speak up about that.
I'm not sure I'm getting an office yet, but it's no problem to look at Dave. I'd take your desk.
Okay, yeah, I know you'd take my desk if you could. Okay, let's get on to what are the top news items going on right now.
Conservatives in Alberta should know that the UCP membership deadline is tomorrow. So if you want to vote for Kenny's leadership, on his leadership, you have to sign up by tomorrow. UCP Associate Minister of Natural Gas and Electricity, Dale Nally, called new MLA Brian Jean unfit to lead the party. Nally wrote a new column that came out last night for the Western Standard, slamming Jean over saying what he would have done by welcoming not least COVID perspectives on running the province and endless lockdowns. And we have an update on that reaction news story will be coming out today. I wrote a piece about Arnold Schwarzenegger. Made a video that came out over many programs on YouTube and whatnot, trying to get Russian viewers. His message to Putin was to stop the war, and then to Russian soldiers, telling them not to listen to Russian propaganda. So that's basically all we're doing on Ukraine today. What else do we have? We have a couple things coming up.
You were supposed to do your Schwarzenegger impression, if I recall. What were we talking about that in the newsroom?
I thought that was you who was going to do the impression today.
No. Every time I've done impressions, we've lost viewers. We have determined that. It's been very solidly voted on by viewers. I'm not allowed to do it any longer.
I don't want to test the viewers today with my impressions. That's okay.
Okay, carry on then.
Mel is digging up a story because many are saying that mandates are being lifted. So why are people still protesting? But we have it coming out later today, exactly why people are still protesting, how many people are being affected by this, and what restrictions are still in place. On the topic of protesting, the Police Commission has a meeting that will be broadcasted later tonight at 3:30. So we'll be covering that after Mel's on that one too. And I'm just looking through what else we have coming up.
Certainly, and and I'll just talk a bit, on the things protesting. I see a commenter pointing out that Artur Pawlowski is still imprisoned right now, whether people like Artur or don't like him or his style. When people are saying there's nothing to be protested, no, there are a number of items still going on. And again, you might not agree with what they're protesting for, but that's, again, where that dialogue has to come. You don't have to agree with what somebody's protesting for to understand that they do feel upset with something, and that's why they're out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you were saying, the counter protesters are growing every week. I was there 3 weeks ago. It was only a couple people. And then 2 weeks ago, maybe 10. And then last weekend was a little bit larger. So it'll be interesting what's going to happen this weekend, especially when the police are saying this has to stop. And the mayor is saying this has to stop, but not actually listening to what the protesters are saying, the large groups of freedom. So, yeah.
Yeah, respect would go a long ways in calming things down.
So yeah, that's all we got from the newsroom today. Thanks, Corey, for checking in.
All you've got. Okay, well, and I know I'll just let everybody know you're escaping skiing this weekend, so we'll get a report on any potential injuries or trees that you've hit over the course of it.
I'll let you know. Hopefully I can stay strapped on to the snowboard, or hopefully I don't go flying off anywhere.
I'm certain you'll be fine. Well, have some fun down there, and we'll talk to you on Monday.
Thank you.
Great. So that's Eva Sudik, and yes, she's been down to those protests, a great reporter on the ground, and yes, she's been broadening her duties here at the Western Standard offices. A lot of stories coming out, things are on the works, and we're going to see them all pinging up. So that reminder, get to westernstandardonline.com, take out a subscription, because all those stories, I know some people complain it's behind a paywall. Yes, it is. But you can get in there for free for 2 weeks to check it out if you don't have a subscription already. and see if it's worth your while. And 95% of the people who take out that trial subscription think that's the case, and they keep their subscription going. It's $10 a month, $99 if you go for a whole year. And if you use the code TRIGGERED when you get in there, you'll save another $10 on that. This is all good savings. I mean, we're talking, with all those incentives, taking it out for a year, using that TRIGGERED, that's a lunch. That's a good lunch you can buy. And then read the Western Standard at your lunch while you wait for your food. So by all means do that. We really rely on those subscribers. That's how we stay independent. I was talking about the mainstream media and how I'm not exactly thrilled with their coverage and where it's been going. And a lot of that is because they are dependent on government funding. And when they do that, they don't want to rock the boat. They're scared to do independent coverage. When they need subsidies, they know they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. Well, the hand that feeds us is the subscribers and the members and the sponsors. So we answer to you guys. And if we are being unfair and if we are doing poor coverage, well, you guys are going to drop your subscriptions and we're just going to end up broke. But at the rate we're going, it's growing and it's been fantastic. So thank you all to those who have already subscribed. And please, if you haven't already, take out a subscription and help share it. Let your friends know, send it off somewhere else. You can subscribe based on behalf of somebody else as well. We can keep spreading. We don't have to be beholden to those jackals in what we call the mainstream, or I do prefer that term, legacy media, which means it's something that's past tense. It's going away. We're evolving beyond and above what it used to be. So I'm going to speak about one of our sponsors here before we get to our guest in a little while too, and that is Bitcoin Well. These guys have been sponsoring us for quite some time. They offer a fantastic service. They're a Western Canadian company. They are publicly traded, and yes, if you're interested in getting into digital currencies, these guys help facilitate you getting in there. That's their whole thing. It's leading you through it safely, making sure your hard-earned money is always in your control, and taking you step by step as to whether or not Bitcoin is even for you. It's not necessarily for everybody. Maybe you'll check them out and think it's not for you. But, again, when we have a government that literally can come in and steal your money, get those banks to seize your accounts, hold them up, what are you stuck with? Unless you have cash under the bed or, some chunks of gold, you need something. Well, if you got digital currencies, you're immune from that. They can't get to your cold wallet. What's a cold wallet? Well, that's the way it's stored. Bitcoin Well explains that a heck of a lot better than I do. That's what I mean. It's always in your hands. They lead you through that and get you involved in digital currency. So check them out, bitcoinwell.com, and take control of your money. It's yours. Make sure it stays that way. So, I'll talk about a news item that came up. This is in Blacklock's Reporter, and there's a standard story coming on it. But it says it was, these committees are finding out everything that happened after the Emergencies Act was declared. We're getting the hindsight on things. Panicked credit union depositors withdrew millions after the cabinet ordered a freeze on accounts of Freedom Convoy sympathizers, executives disclosed. Many Canadians felt surprised that the government had the authority. Yeah, I'm still surprised. I have a low expectation of them, but they still managed to outdo themselves. To be able to do such a reach. And the CEO of the Canadian Credit Union Association said there was a degree of panic among Canadians that their accounts might be frozen. So, of course, there was a run. They yanked the money out. Now, the Canadian Bankers Association, on the other hand, said the complete opposite. And they said that it wasn't a problem with people and said it was just anecdotal stories and nothing of significance. It again shows our sick system. And that's the head of the Canadian Bankers Association spreading, which clearly was obviously a bunch of complete baloney. Right now, it sounds like it was between 206 and 210 accounts worth $7.8 million were frozen. And the RCMP put its blacklist at about 257 accounts worth an undetermined amount. This is pretty scary stuff in a government, in this world when you can have your assets frozen for supporting the wrong cause. And we better investigate and make sure this never happens again. And when you see those sorts of statements, that pure BS, the head of the Canadian Bankers Association basically feeding us the government line, I'm glad that somebody came out and countered them, shows that, again, how Canada is broken on so many levels. So I'm going to get to my guest right away. He's somebody who most often agrees that Canada is pretty broken, and that's Paul Hinman, with the leader of the Wildrose Independence Party. Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Good morning, Corey. Doing good. How are you?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Always got my usual head of steam going. And
well, broken is the key word right now.
Yeah.
Dysfunctional and broken.
I'm afraid so. So you've finished the by-election. I hope you've gotten some rest. I know they're exhausting
No.
affairs. You're still running hard. Okay.
Well, we were out till 2 o'clock in the morning picking up signs. We're hoping today to finish, but no, it's been brutal. We have a lot of signs out and a lot of support, and it's been a lot of work to clean up and put things away. But it's so good to be able to work with the volunteers and to be able to chat and to, review things and what was good and what didn't. But no, it was a great experience up here in Fort McMurray.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, I could relate with it really well with the Wildrose with one of our elections, actually, when I was in the Arctic for most of it, even though I was a candidate in Mountain View, and volunteers had put signs all over Mountain View for me. I was only home for 3 days, so I had to go out and pick up all these signs, and I didn't know where they were. They hadn't tracked it, and I was terribly hungover at that time because we'd had all that free red wine on the election night. And boy, that was a long, long day getting those. You don't realize how many you put out until you got to go get them.
Well, we've had 2 long days already. We're hoping today we get the rest. It's been a lot of work.
Yeah, well, and of course your work isn't done, so I'm afraid the outcome wasn't as strong as you'd hoped for. I imagine in the by-election. I mean, you were certainly still a solid third in there, which is something to be said for that. I mean, it's a party that's on the upward mobility, I guess you could say. But what do you think the factors were leading to the election results we saw the other night?
Well, Corey, it's always fun to be able to look back and you realize that there's 2 things that to me are key in election. One is the emotion of the people, and 2 is the ballot question connected to the emotion of the people. And there's overwhelming, and again, this election showed that evidence that the people are very upset with Jason Kenney, and they want Jason Kenney to go. And the people here thought, well, Brian Jean was the best option to do that. And that ballot question was that versus our ballot question basically is who do you want deciding our future, Ottawa or Alberta? Are we going to say no to the carbon tax and no to net zero, or is Trudeau and company going to be able to shut us down?
Yeah, well, and it was a very complicated by-election for a number of reasons. I mean, a lot of internal stuff going on. I mean, I don't think I'll see it again, probably, where we'll have a person running against their own leader of their party in a by-election. And right now that's still unfolding as we now have the UCP government coming out against their own newly elected, or at least members of it coming out, their newly elected member with Brian Jean. What a bizarre outcome.
It really is. And I guess we'll let them continue their internal fighting and backstabbing. But yeah, very, very unusual. But I mean, Brian Jean is the king of poll chasing. And he saw the momentum there, and he wants to be able to claim that he was the one who slew the evil dragon. And so it'll be fun to watch. And I think his end results will be very disappointing for himself and where Alberta goes. But yeah, that's where the emotion right now is. And the other thing that's so critical that we learned, and we need to learn to do better, is to get out the vote. You can have the support, but I tell you, between the apathy of the people and this pure disgust with government and politics, 23% is shameful to review on what government is doing and how government is reaching out to the people. And I'll tell you, the overwhelming answer at the door, if you ask it, is, do you think it makes any difference who you elect? No, you're all the same. And I mean, that's just the people are disgusted with government, or else the apathy is that, you know what, my vote doesn't make a difference. And it came out soundly in this by-election where people are absolutely disgusted with government, but don't think that their vote's really going to make a difference. And it's hard, to meet people at the door and only have a few seconds to talk to them and engage them. And then if you don't have all the tracking to try and have volunteers to call them back and to get them to say, look, your vote will make a difference. And we are different. We're accountable. Like, you can actually fire us if you're not happy. You can't do that with the other parties. But it's a challenge. But again, there's nothing more educational and helpful for someone who wants to be an elected representative than talking to people at the door.
Yeah, well, and we're political types, and we know that. We're going to vote in every possible opportunity, but that it is distressing to see that growing cynicism. Unfortunately, something I've always said, and maybe the day will come when and I used to say that when I door knock with people, they're all the same. Well, then don't worry about it. There's nothing to lose in voting for me.
Yep.
And if I don't do it, then fire me. Well, then the next guy will be just the same. Well, fire them. And I know it's a dream and maybe it's just ideological, but you know what? If we fired members 3 elections in a row, you're going to get a really responsive one in the next one, because if they want a job for more than 4 years, they're actually going to listen. But it is up to the voters to do it. And they instead they're going in, they're introverting rather than getting out and voting. And it's too bad.
Well, and again, it goes back to the basics of freedom. If you've never had them, you don't know how to use them, and you don't know how valuable they are. And it's the same with recall. We've never had it. They don't know how valuable it is, and you don't need to go protesting and do all of these things in letter writing. All you need to do is get the petition, take it to the legislative house, get it approved, and then go out and gather the signatures. And what's most exciting for me about recall is when you're mad, there's something that you can do, because, all I got to do is collect, 2,000, 4,000 signatures. What did we get out in this vote? I can't remember now. 5,000 people, just 2,500 signatures, and you can fire Paul Hinman or Brian Jean. But because they've never had it, they don't realize the value on like you say, maybe it will take 2 or 3 elections, but boy, there's nothing more valuable than to hold the hammer and saying, sorry, Hinman, sorry, Morgan, you're done, and we're collecting the signatures. But more important, when people are mad at you and they go to collect the signatures and they find out, these other people aren't mad, then the animosity and the anger in them actually resides, and they realize, well, no, maybe actually it's not that bad. So it's actually a calming effect, and it's just very helpful.
Yeah, and I mean, some people, again, they say, then we'd have endless recall elections going on. Well, that's only if the members are really that bad. I know some are, but I think, as you said, if they had that hanging, they probably behave themselves a little better. And a lot of people don't understand what's involved with real petitioning, like not an internet petition, not something like that.
No.
But go door to door, get a physical signature from a person with their address and their phone number, because that's what you got to do. Getting a few thousand of those in a timeline, it has to be pretty serious before people will take part in that. I mean, as we can see, we can only get a quarter of them out to vote in a by-election, unfortunately. So,
yeah.
So getting, I guess, to cynicism though, and issues, and I said that a bit in the email when I talked to you. We as conservatives, and particularly independence-minded ones, we're a bunch of rabid squirrels often, and we're always fighting with ourselves, and we're certainly seeing it with the UCP. And we see it with other parties. I know there's been some grumbling happening with the Wildrose Independence Party, perhaps, about strategic choices on your part and such. How can you address those right now?
Well, it's interesting, the comments that were put out. They're ridiculous. That our job is to give people choice. We absolutely, we enter a race we want to win, but this is an educational process. And what we need to do in the next year, and this will hopefully, I want to say, motivate more people who want to be running for the Wildrose to get out and start door knocking now. There's 2 options that you have in an election: an emotional election, where people go out on an emotion, or an actual one where there's there's some thought into it and some resolve, and say, yeah, this is what I believe in, this is what I want, and voting for a cause. I mean, you and I both know more governments get voted out than get voted in, and to address the concerns. But yes, there's been some crazy comments, but the fact of the matter is the majority of people were thrilled. We got into double digits. We established that we're absolutely the third party. The other ones didn't even come close, and all the rhetoric I get, that, we got to do this, we got to do that. To the other one, they got 0.4% of the vote, these other parties. We were at 10.8%. I mean, there's a mile between us. We're competitive. People actually see us as an alternative. But the ballot question was, hey, we want to get rid of Jason Kenney. We would have loved to do better. And again, I don't know. It's just exciting to get out there and be in double digits on your first election ever for the Wildrose Independence Party. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, some people do need to understand, as we know, again, from building alternative parties is a lot of work. It's a big climb. I mean, from back when it was Alberta Alliance to Wildrose Alliance, we went into a lot of elections with single-digit showings. Eventually, though, that did, built into forming official opposition and really actually threatening government. It's a long, convoluted story on what happened with it. But those modest beginnings, we would have been thrilled with an 11% support number in some of those early elections. And when you compare that, I mean, when I talk about a solid third place, that's very solid. The next one going back was 1.4%, I believe, or something like that with the Liberals, and the others couldn't break 1%. So it's good placement on a growing party. I mean, what you guys decide to make with it, we'll see from here. But, you can't call it a complete loss. That's for sure.
Oh no, it was incredible. But I always say, some of the attitudes of some of our people is that, well, you didn't win, you didn't get gold. Okay, so we're never going to go to the Olympics again. We can't try to climb Mount Everest again. Like Hillary never would have made it. The British expedition would have never gone up Mount Everest if, we failed on our first one. No, we got this far. We learned lots. We got to come back. This is what we need to do. We got to get out the vote. You start from election day back, and are you prepared? And we definitely did not have the power to get out our supporters and get out the vote. And we got to focus on that more in the next elections. One of the biggest things that we learned or knew where we had a deficit was that team for getting out the vote on election day.
Yeah, well, and if ever I was lacking a crystal ball as to what we're going to see in the next year, it's right now. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen after April 9th. There's probably 12 different, pathways and scenarios we can see coming up with the UCP right there. I mean, and again, that variable, a lot of people voted against Jason Kenney as opposed to for Brian Jean in this by-election. And that's an unusual distinguishment, but it makes it difficult to campaign and stick to your messaging and policies and things like that when you've got a more personal battle going on.
And that'll be our challenge. And why I say this next year of door knocking is where we actually engage voters, and they're going to be of that anger of voting something out. As I said, more governments get voted out and more people get voted out than get voted in. And Brian Jean certainly didn't get voted in. That was a vote in confidence against Jason Kenney, which is going to be very interesting to watch on the 9th on how that turns out. And then more interesting to see who comes out as the new leader, if in fact they're able to dethrone him.
Well, and I guess one thing that perhaps could be put to rest in these election results, in at least that constituency for sure, the threat of a vote split leading to an NDP win was not even close. It was not a consideration because people like using that to stop alternative movements and say, well, boy, if you get out there and we vote for you, we're going to put the NDP in. And I know in some urban ridings that might be more of a consideration, but still, it was nowhere even close. In fact, the NDP lost ground, which kind of surprised me in this.
Yeah, and that was the surprising thing of all of this is that I thought the NDP would hold solid. They have a solid base. They don't, and people realize that they're not the answer. I can tell you the two things that I hit at the door the most was, well, I'm not voting for Brian Jean and I'm not voting for the NDP. They ruined us, and those were very prevalent. But yet, okay, what did they vote for? Well, they voted to get rid of Jason Kenney. And, like I say, by-elections are finicky, but it's just exciting after spending 3.5 months talking to people at the door to realize that we have an opportunity to get our message out there. Is the next election, the ballot question is who's making the decisions? Is it going to be Ottawa or is it going to be Alberta? Is it going to be Justin Trudeau and the Liberal policy? Is it going to be Paul Hinman and the Wildrose candidates that are putting Albertans first, that know that we need to protect our future? And that'll be goal one and value one. And I think Albertans are going to be excited to realize that there is a leader in myself and the party in the Wildrose that is focusing on saving Alberta from Ottawa's destructive policies. We've got to protect ourselves or we're going down with this sinking ship. And Canada is a sinking ship.
Great. So what plans, are there events or anything coming up with the party going forward now? Have you got an AGM or anything like that on the horizon? Or?
Yeah, we'll have an AGM. The date hasn't been set. I imagine the next 30 days that will probably set the date. It'll be here the next few months, and we're looking forward to that for members coming. And again, my leadership will be on the line there. Unlike the UCP, every AGM, the leadership will get his vote on whether the members want me to carry on or whether they says, nope, we need somebody new. So join up, become part of Wildrose Nation, and you can participate in our AGM here in the next couple of months.
Great. And actually, something else, I like bringing questions forward from the listeners and viewers. And this one, I have to admit, I'm not terribly familiar with it, but the Alberta Prosperity Project is wondering, and perhaps with that or with other groups, so they're going to be alliances or working with other things, because there seems to be a lot of disparate organizations, whether it's parties or lobby groups, pushing for similar goals, but not necessarily all together. The Judean People's Front syndrome is kind of going on a bit, but.
Well, it's always interesting. All these groups that are saying they're unity this or unity that, they approached me. Some even slagged me saying I didn't come down for a unity minute. I says, if you guys really want unity, if you understand how important our independence is, come up and work with us on the by-election. And they had no desire to do that. Again, it's a facade. They talk a lot, and again, there's a lot of different groups I'm talking about, not being specific, but I reached out to most of them, and all of them said that they were too busy to come up here to work in the by-election and to try to get the people to realize the importance of independence. The Wildrose is the party of choice. We're out there with a double-digit lead, and those people who want to join and fight and protect Alberta and to become, an independent, sovereign nation, come join the Wildrose Nation and be part of our efforts here in this next year.
Great. Now, just in closing, I'll throw one more from a viewer, Richard, who's just asking, his broader question would take a whole new segment, which I'm sure we can do down the road with any luck. But it's one aspect. He's asking about the challenges that exist if there was a referendum to separate, and pursue independence. But the big question is including First Nations land ownership. I mean, that's a big hang up. People put that up. Maybe if I could just get you to address that one question, because it's a big one, and I know we could talk for an hour about answering all the rest of the independence questions.
And I love the fact that your show says, well, if we need to talk a little longer, we can. We're not like the legacy parties or media where, time's up. So that's an enjoyable part, Corey. So I'm always happy to discuss that. Well, first of all, what this next election will be about is giving Paul Hinman and the Wildrose candidates a mandate to exercise our full autonomy from Ottawa. And an election and forming government, we will have it laid out very specifically on the autonomy and the things that we're going to be exercising. And the people, if they vote for that, will have that mandate. We respect individual rights, and we certainly respect group and tribal rights. And they're part of their deal with the First Nations and the Indigenous is with Ottawa and the Crown. And again, it'll be up to them to look at that and analyze. And I mean, it's down the road, and they can watch us for a couple of years and see how it looks and what it would be like to be in a sovereign Alberta where they're equal, where they own property rights, where they actually have opportunities to get ahead and not have a father figure that tells them, well, we're taking your royalties, we're put into trust, and we'll tell you what you can do. And they can't manage their own affairs and their property. And so when you actually sit down and look at the opportunities they'll have as an equal Albertan and to own their property and to be able to exercise their rights and have the advantages of using that to get ahead, I think that they'll be excited to be part of us.
Yeah, well, independence can be framed to benefit everybody. It's just going to take a lot of communication, in my view, along with a lot of other things. So thanks for addressing that one. Again, I won't keep you on for a full hour to try and cover all the other questions when it comes to independence. Where can we find more information about contacting you and the party if people have more questions or concerns and such?
Go to our website, wildrosenation.com, wildrosenation.com, and sign up for our newsletter, sign up and become a member. The number's 1-888-262-1888. Give us a call. And we're happy to reach out. And again, go to our website. I'm not sure how long mine will be up. It was choosewildrose.com for the by-election. But wildrosenation.com is the best place. And again, on Twitter, Paul Hinman Whippa. It's just great to reach out and to spread our message and our message of hope and an opportunity going forward, because boy, the legacy parties like the legacy media is failing us, and we need to have a new alternative. Wildrose is here for you. We're here for Albertans, and you can count on us and you can trust us.
Great. Well, thanks for joining me again today, Paul. It's always good talking to you. And again, good luck with all those signs and getting a bit of a breather and working moving forward.
Thanks, Corey. Take care and keep up the good work.
Great. Thanks. So yes, Paul Hinman of the Wildrose Independence Party, who, as we said, just finished a hard-fought by-election. And it does say something to the ground game. I've worked with Paul on by-elections before and things like that's that difference that made the third place finish, though, as opposed to those other parties that were there, but they were also Rands. They didn't hit the ground hard. They didn't bang on all those doors. They didn't spend months at it. And that's why, the Alberta Party, always a lot of talk. And where did they get? Less than 1%. Because they weren't out there actually doing. That's the thing. You do have to work on the ground. I did see some comments, some people, somebody saying, I'll prove to me that the elections aren't rigged. Okay. I can't say that for every election, but I'll talk about something. Some people haven't been involved in a lot of elections before, and it's a good part of our system. That's why I never want to move away from paper ballots, by the way. I don't. Is to be a scrutineer. You have that opportunity on elections in every level. And if you're with a party or if it's municipal or whatever, you can register yourself. You go to the elections office, and every party will do it. And it's a good check and balance. They'll have scrutineers who go out on polling day or even in the advance polls, and they can visibly observe every step of it. If you're there early, if you want a long, boring day, go for it. I mean, they will even show you the empty cardboard boxes at the start of the, before the poll opens to make sure you see there's no ballots stuffed in there. There's nothing inside it. Seal it up in front of you. You can watch the voting all day. You make sure, and then at counting time, even you watch those boxes get opened up. You see those ballots out there, and you see them counted. And this is done in all of those elections. I know there's Dominion counting machine questions and things like that. That's an American thing. We haven't had that going on in the by-election and other stuff like that. And I'm not saying it never happens where there's been malfeasance in elections and things like that. But our system with the paper ballots and with scrutineers taking part is actually pretty good. We don't necessarily like the outcomes. We don't like some of the tactics that were done by parties in campaigning and so on. But I assure you, if there was really anything rigged, there's too many independent eyes on the process. The thing we got to watch for is anybody trying to get us away from paper ballots. That is where we could get a problem. If we start casting digital ballots or, even using machines to cast it, then I'm going to get really, really worried. Stick to what we have right now. It's not perfect, but there are a lot of checks and balances, and it works really well. And scrutineering is a really boring job for campaign volunteers. The best you get out of it usually is a Subway sandwich and a coffee while you sit there and make sure everything's staying on the up and up. But it's really important. And you can do that, and you can talk to other people. Lori, you're saying it's rigged. Well, the proof is on you then, Lori, to say that it is. Because I've been to these. I've scrutineered at them. Again, I didn't like the tactics, but I've seen absolutely no indication of rigging, and I don't know how they would do it if they did. Not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying it's never happened. But I haven't seen how it's done, and I haven't seen it done. So, but again, we do have to watch. There's people who would love to rig it if they could. Mail-in ballots are always a thing of concern. We saw that in Calgary many years ago with a municipal candidate who ordered like thousands or something like that of mail-in ballots, and then it was the spouse of the candidate, and it was really clumsily done, and it ended up falling apart. That's what I'm talking about. Is there's ways you could try to rig the system, and there's people willing to try and rig the system, but it's not as easy as some people think. But we just always got to make sure we have those good old classic, get in there and vote in person, put an X on a piece of paper, and you have that record, and you have scrutineers and that right to be scrutineers, to be there and watch the process from start to end. And it'll make it really hard for those people who would like to rig elections get away with it. So getting back to misinformation and things being rigged, let's talk about some news stuff before we get up to our next guest here in a bit. Some of the rumors, speaking of mainstream media and the government, talking about, who bankrolled the Freedom Convoy. That was a big one. Apparently it was going to be big foreign millionaires. This was it. They were taking care of the convoy, and they were funding it and trying to disrupt us. The CBC even tried to imply that it was Russians behind it. Of course, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Well, the Commons Finance Committee found out no, absolutely none. Despite what Trudeau's cabinet said, claims of six-figure foreign interference. That's what the cabinet said. One Liberal MP even did the Russia thing. No, didn't happen. Not even close. And they've reviewed those donations, and they checked for foreign sources. GoFundMe and the others have said, and we know GoFundMe was not necessarily a friend of the convoy in the end. They rolled over. Well, they're going to cooperate with the government and sharing their stuff too. And they said, no, there was no pile of foreign funders taking care of this. So, so much for that baloney that's going out there. Transparency, getting back to, I guess, the elections and getting to things in general media, I tie it all together. As long as we maintain it, it does come out in the wash eventually. And the government is looking really, really bad as we follow up, as we do these investigations, as we see what's happened. So we see that the government did lie to people. We see that the government did rig things in a sense, that they created that false narrative of there being a foreign conspiracy funding these convoys in order to bring in the Emergencies Act, which blew up in their own faces and is unforgivable. It really is. It was a form of martial law, and we can never forget it. And we should be following up and obliterating the people electorally who are in office right now. And the lies are starting to come out. So yeah, they determined that 88% of the donations originated in Canada. 86% of the donors were Canadian. And this was based on checks of banks accounts and credit card records. So no, it was a lie, and the media happily fed that lie, and they happily do. What do we got here? Oh yeah, let's talk. I got a treat for you. I see Cheryl saying, "Where is Brown and Charest running for the leadership of the Conservative Party?" Yeah, well, everybody can run. And as I said, a treat that's coming, I'm going to be talking to candidate Jean Charest on Monday morning on the show. I'm going to actually be recording that prior, availabilities with these candidates, as when I had Pierre Poilievre on as well. It's tough to get them in live. I'd like to try to. I'm going to keep trying to get them live, but either way, I'm going to have them for about 15 minutes on Monday morning. So if you've got some questions you want to put forward, I'll try and get as many as I can. As I said, with those minutes passed fast, and those guys could really talk up a storm. So I want to make sure to get a few good pointed ones into them. I'm certainly going to ask him about the firearm stance. I'll save you sending that email if you're going to ask. It's definitely on the list. Send me though at cmorgan@westernstandardonline.com. Questions, suggestions, other things too in general. And I'll see if I can't get those questions forward to Charest. Charest has COVID, yes. So it's going to be a remote interview. Curly Mayhew, Pierre is World Economic Forum. Okay, guys, I'll repeat it again. It's been addressed. It was on True North. He said absolutely he has nothing to do with him. He's never been to Davos. He's not taken part in it. The World Economic Forum label is getting as bad as the label thrown out by the government against convoy supporters. It exists, absolutely. And Schwab has big grand plans, and morons like Trudeau parrot their stuff. But they aren't controlling nearly as much as a lot of people think they are, or as much as these guys hope they're controlling. This thing, I don't know how many times we've got to keep addressing it. This WEF WEF that. That's the great thing with that World Economic Forum thing, is it is actually fairly transparent. Their wishes with the Great Reset and the people who have attended their functions and how much they attended, whether they were just a viewer in the audience or whether they were a participant, it is all public record. You can find it there. It's just not that hidden. And I do, like I said, I think their goals are repugnant. I think they want world socialism. I do think they want to control. Well, they make no secret of it. They want to control leaders, but not all of them have anything to do with it necessarily. So we're kind of throwing that label out all over the place, and it doesn't necessarily apply. But either way, I mean, there's some who are just naturally left-winging, and Charest is certainly one of them. It's going to be interesting talking to him. I guess they're people of ambition. They're politicians. He wants to get the brass ring. He wants to be the prime minister. He sat there when he was a young member of parliament, him and Elsie Wayne alone in the House of Commons back at the start of the 90s, and then he moved on as a liberal. It'll be interesting to have him explain why Westerners should embrace him as a leader. It's not to my leaning, but I'll give him credit where it's due. He's coming out to talk to me on the show more than Brian Jean will do. So he's willing to address, our listeners and viewers out here in what's basically hostile territory. And I appreciate that. If he doesn't give the answers that members want to hear, he's not going to gain the votes. But at least he's going to speak to us about it and answer what questions he will. So I do respect that. And we're trying to get the rest of the leadership candidates on, as this carries on and as it keeps going. So maybe I'll take a moment to speak about another one of our sponsors here, actually, while I'm at it then. And that's the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. We've talked about them a lot. And as I said, I'm going to talk to Charest about his thoughts on policies with regards to firearms and some of the ones that have been miscategorized, hunting rifles and such that are now banned. The Canadian Shooting Sports Association, well, these are a group of guys. They're a fantastic sponsor for us. And their name says it all. They're an association like any other kind you'd have. It's where you can interact and share resources with other people with the same interests. And in this case, it's firearm and shooting sports, which could be target shooting, collecting, hunting, any of those things. And they have all kinds of resources, whether it's videos showing you safe firearm use and things like that, as most of us safely do so, or even links to trade shows and things like that. But the other thing they do have is legal challenges, a number of legal challenges against the liberal policies that have been taking away your rights, disarming Canadians, taking their property, recategorizing firearms. They have multiple legal challenges against that out there on your behalf, and they need your help to do that. So check them out, because you can take out a membership with them, and it's really important. As a firearms owner, you really should be a member. Go to the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, CSSA-CILA.org. Take out a membership, and they can help keep pushing back, because those rights are going to be taken if we let them. And it's up to us in that, getting back to that apathy that Paul was talking about. We do want to make sure that, wait a second. Okay. Sorry, I just got a message from Dan McLean. He's might be a couple minutes late. He's rushing back to City Hall from a meeting, but either way, he might be a couple minutes late, but that's okay. I'll just keep babbling at you. So we got more news to talk about. Speaking of government mistrust and frustration and things such as that, we got the Manitoba Premier, Heather Stephenson. You don't hear a heck of a lot about her. I believe she's progressive conservative, and terribly low support numbers. She makes almost as bad as Kenny, or maybe even worse. But you can see some of why. And this is the stuff that sours people on politics. This is part of what keeps people from wanting to come out, and people say that they're all the same. And we see that in every level of government. Trudeau does it all the time. His ministers do it well. Manitoba Premier did it. She was asked in question period about a woman who died in Manitoba, a valid question on a health issue. And she spent the whole answer talking about her son's hockey team instead of answering the question. It's not even just dodging, but it's being insulting in her refusal to address a direct question. And we see that so much in government. We see it so much in politics, and it gets tiresome. And that's what makes people stay home from voting. And we need to see less of it. We need more direct, frank answers from people. So when Heather Stephenson is dodging like that was similar to the question and answer we saw with Pierre Poilievre asking about house prices in Ottawa, and that minister just kept coming up and talking about non-related things over and over again, not only to not answer the question, but to insult the questioners every time. It's got to stop. That's the stuff that keeps people home. And the more people stay home, it's not going to make your political representatives better. I promise you. I know it seems frustrating when you come out and you vote and it just doesn't seem like it's working, but the worst alternative is not voting at all. All right, so I'm going to bring another elected representative in to speak with us here. We've got him in the lobby there, and that's Councillor Dan McLean. He's with Ward 13 in that hornet's nest of Calgary's council. And I've been looking forward to talking to Dan for quite some time now. So let's pop him in there. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Corey. How are you?
Good, thanks. No, glad we could get you on. As I was saying to the viewers earlier, I saw your message, but I'm on live, so it's hard for me to respond back. Oh, okay, you're just going to be delayed a bit. It happens. It's all right.
Well, so busy morning, met with the Firefighter Union and then with my local MLA for some ring road issues. Nice. Today, later on, we've got the Calgary Police Commission. So Fridays are supposed to be easy, but no. But this is the highlight of my day, Corey, to be honest with you.
Well, I appreciate that. I won't be as hard on you as many of those other things, particularly the police commission and some of the other stuff. Before we get on to the more immediate pressing issues, I'll just talk some quick general things. Like this has been a tumultuous city council, I guess you could say, a very new one, including yourself. This is your first term with them. Are you starting to settle in, I guess, into a bit of the first 2 months, it's holy cow, everybody's already missing the days of Nenchi's leadership when they would only scream for half the sessions. Is it starting to stabilize a little, kind of people finding their roles or getting a little towards productivity, or?
Yeah, it has, I guess, the short answer. Maybe not fast enough. You're right. It started off like they always talk about drinking through a fire hose, but you had a bunch of new councillors, a lot with little business experience or political experience. And so, there's some growing pains where they throw a lot at you real quick. And I think what's frustrating for some people, as they're feeling their way along, there's a lot of talking, a lot of questions, and things are maybe being done as fast as they could be. But there is, I think I was talking to some of my fellow councilmates yesterday, and they said it's only been a few months, but it feels like a year. And we've got 3.5 years to go, but it's getting better, Corey. Yeah, there is not as fast as I would like it to be done. It seems like politics moves like molasses in the first place, but in a perfect world, we'd maybe do less debating and getting more action done, and hopefully we can get there.
Yeah, so I'll get to one of the more divisive things that's happening right now, and Calgary seems to be now turning kind of into the hub of the remnants of the larger protests against COVID mandates and things. I don't want to discuss so much what the motivation of protesters is or whatnot, but it's clearly there's a lot of people who still feel that they need to get out and gather in the thousands and march every weekend in Calgary. It is frustrating some citizens and residents down there. But at the same time, we're getting some pretty heated rhetoric coming from some members of city council, which, to be honest, in my view, I found frankly very insulting to some people who are just genuinely concerned down there. But we might be coming to a head this weekend, and it's getting really concerning on what may happen. I mean, I think nobody rational wants to see a conflict, but it seems almost like we're heading towards one.
Sadly, that looks like what's going to happen. We will see on Saturday. I'm very, very upset about this, Corey. I mean, the protesting is one thing. I mean, we all support legal protests, and these have been peaceful and legal. Again, in my opinion, they've gone on for, I think their voices have been heard. I mean, a lot of people wanted, myself included, to have restrictions and mandates and all these things be repealed. As you know, I fought really hard to have our mask bylaw repealed. So we've listened, we've heard, the cities got there, the provinces got there. Federally, I understand. I mean, hey, I would all like to see the federal leader Trudeau be gone as well, but protesting until that happens is untenable. Now, what's happened here that makes me upset is that I think they were winding down to a logical conclusion, but some councillors on this city councillors and the mayor have, I think, maybe inflamed the situation by calling for counter protests or even showing up in some and fighting this battle on Twitter. As you know, council cannot instruct the police or the police commission on what to do. And indirectly or directly, this seems to kind of have been happening. And so now we've seen this issue inflamed where and hopefully this weekend we'll see it could be much worse now. So I would have preferred city council maybe just to zip it and maybe stayed out of this and let the police do their jobs and handle it in their own fashion.
Well, that's it. And I mean, I'd gone to a couple of these, not as a participant, but to observe, especially when it was peaking, during the truckers' convoy in Ottawa, and there were thousands of people. But I found it really remarkable with how peaceful and upbeat the groups were. And, it was winding down. It was getting smaller, but I could see why the people who took part could be really offended by some of the nature of people calling them racists, calling them extremists, whatever they might be, and don't agree with their cause. But there is no evidence that this is a race-based thing. And we're getting that from some senior elected officials, which really, I could see that saying, you know what, I'm getting off my couch and I'm going back down there now. Because now I was okay with the mandates dropping, but I'm ticked off now at being labeled like this. I wish we could just get some more, rational discussion going on.
Well, again, I could be critical and cynical because, again, the race card is just it's overused and getting well worn. And as you said, there's a lot of people, and a lot of them contact me directly, and are very upset at being called racist or white supremacist. If you go down there, I have not myself, but I've seen the images. And it's people from all stripes and colors and backgrounds. So you can't say it's a white supremacist movement. So for some certain councillors, I'm not going to name any names. I'm not looking to get you to get into it. Yeah. Well, Corey, I will be critical on social media of the mayor and some councillors' policies. Now, that's one thing, to be critical of policies. Now, going after a person's character, now that's a whole different issue. Or maybe some of this could be political, where you're putting out, again, this shouldn't be litigated on social media in the first place, but calls for action to maybe get more clicks or maybe to get your base, more support from your base. The outcomes now, we've got a situation that's totally inflamed, and people have been insulted their characters, so and unfairly characterized. Again, having said that, I think that we're all, I sympathize with the residents in the Beltline, or you get down to Coots or down in Ottawa. I mean, when businesses get disrupted or your afternoon, but again, calling them names and calling them white supremacists, that's not fair. That's not right.
No, and so as we're heading towards this tense weekend, there's only so much can be done in short order, and there's a lot of questions over jurisdiction or who can do what. The city council's role isn't to push the police commission around or to push the chief around. But what do you think at this point can be done, hopefully to alleviate pressure this weekend or avoid conflict?
Well, 3/3, excuse me, we're getting two briefings today from Calgary Police Commission at 3:30. Some will be in public and some will be behind closed doors. There has been some letters written back and forth, strongly worded letters. And again, you talked earlier about this council maybe not getting things done in a timely fashion. I've always said words are one thing, actions another. So I'd like to see less talk and more action. Something that, and so I guess, Corey, what I'm saying is we will hear from Calgary Police Commission today what they are going to propose. Because again, it's my job as a city councillor is not to direct them and say, here, write more parking tickets, or you could put up some barriers or close the park down and put up fencing. There's been a lot of talk about maybe some bylaw enforcement saying, you know, their parking's only there for 2 hours and start writing tickets. I will see what they have to say. But again, the best thing that I can do, or my my colleagues should be doing, is again, not having any calls for action and saying, hey, let's all get out there and, you know, get, more people on both sides of it and make this even bigger with a potential of this to get violent, because so far it's been very peaceful. So again, I don't have the answers. I will see if the police commission or the Calgary Police Service have some answers, and I'll know more by the end of today.
Yeah, well, a good first step is, just stop pouring fuel on it. That would be a refreshing beginning. So hopefully we see some of that coming out. So maybe we'll, I've got a few more minutes with you. Turning along then, it's your first term in council. What are your priorities going forward now that, aside from the immediate pressing issues, goals and things that you are hoping to accomplish in this city council?
Oh, huge goal is just selling Calgary as the best place in the world to not only live, but bring your businesses here, move here. Let's make it a business-friendly city. Again, not just words and actions and flowery mission statements. We need to make sure that we encourage affordable housing. This is a big thing. I'm a child, I live in the suburbs. I'm a small town farm boy to begin with. So, and a lot of people do not necessarily want to live downtown. Sure, we want to make a vibrant, beautiful downtown with lots of options and maybe a nice entertainment district. Getting the event center back on track, that's key to me, Corey. So I am on that committee and on the Stampede board, so I'll be working very hard over the next coming weeks and months to, I think that's the integral part that any world-class city should have a world-class event center and a world-class hockey team, which we certainly have. And so that's key to me. And then on top of that, then is just, for my ward in Ward 13, there's a lot of growth. And instead of having people move to Airdrie, Cochrane, Strathmore, Okotoks, let's live here in Calgary. And so we can't have this anti-urban sprawl message that some on council, or maybe that's a messaging that I disagree with, where we need to build more homes because the prices are going up. There's bidding wars, so more affordable housing, more amenities in the suburbs. So it's not always just about downtown, Corey. So I'd like to see that happen. So revitalize the downtown. There's lots of good issues and good things happening with the Arts Commons, BMO expansion, get the event center back on track. Those things for downtown. Bring businesses. Let's make sure that we're tax friendly and easy to do business. Let's not stack a whole bunch of bylaws and regulations and red tape to prevent people from doing business here. Get approvals, development permits done faster. So, and then the other big, huge key thing for me is our homelessness population. We have a real problem with mental health and drug addiction, and on our C trains and our downtown core, and so there's a lot of safety issues. And then so we've really got to work hard with the province, Minister Mike Ellis, and our federal counterparts to see what we can do to get to the core root of these issues and try to clean up and help that situation. So those are just some of the things, but there's lots to do.
Yeah, well, and something that does cross, the downtown urban and the suburban issues is, calling it social disorder. The bottom line is, as you sort of addressed, a lot of it has to do with mental health issues and addiction issues. I mean, you live in the suburbs, you're getting your catalytic converters stolen. And if you're living downtown, we're down here working. I see the syringes. I see the people on the streets. It's very distressing. You went on a police ride along the other day. Did you get some good insight out of that? I mean, we've had a lot of people sort of been rough on the police lately. And again, I think there's no better way to get their point of view than get out there and spend some time with them. So that was good to see.
Yeah, and like I said, met with the fire department this morning, and with transit, I've done some ride-alongs and talked with peace officers on our C trains. So, and again, in that situation, we just can't just kind of push the move, clean out the 1C train station, and then they hop on and then they go to the next ward, and then that's another person's department's problem. So again, we have to get to the root of the problem. Maybe again, some treatment centers where we just don't say, here's a safe injection site, here's some more drugs, and move along. And you can we have to help these people to do that. Some secure, maybe one would say some rehabilitation that is that's necessary. Again, we have to. There's a larger problem here. We need to. There's a word I'm looking for. I can't find, but
it supports and yeah. I mean, it's big. I mean, it's complicated. That's why it's hard to put it into a few words. But just hopefully see people address it rather than kind of avoid it, I guess, is a good first step to start with. And I'm just glad to see you out there meeting the people on the ground. In City Hall or people elected officials, whether it's the legislature or Ottawa, they can get dome disease or auto-washed, I think was some of the term. If you don't get out enough, you don't get to see what's really happening. So I hope, you keep visiting the police officers and the others who have to deal with it firsthand and can keep that perspective for you and see if you can find solutions. I imagine.
Well, and they're having staffing shortages, and so you've got to support the people on the front lines or our frontline services, and they've got a tough and difficult job, and it's increasingly dangerous and stressful, and there's a lot of burnout. So again, we have to support these people and work with them.
Well, great. Well, thanks for coming in to check in. Like I said, it's been a while in coming. I was trying to get you during the election campaign, but it was too tight in time. So thanks for coming in to talk to us today, and we hope we can check in with you again sometime soon, and that this weekend isn't too haywire.
Yeah, well, we'll give you an update, and we'll do this again.
Great. Where can people contact you if they need to, constituents, things such as that?
The best way is to just dan.mclean@calgary.ca.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Councillor McLean.
And besides that, or something simpler, just ward13@calgary.ca.
There we go. Okay. Well, thanks again for coming in on such a busy day, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Corey. Take care.
Thanks. So, and it's as I was saying, anyways, with Councillor McLean, when we come to policing, as he pointed out, they're having staffing shortages. Here's some of the irony and how messed up our world is and our system is, that a lot of people are short of jobs and having a hard time making the bills. And at the same time, we've got professions such as police that are experiencing staffing shortages. But some of that comes down to morale, right? Those police officers, I mean, they're constantly getting nothing but crapped on. We're seeing a lot of that from some members in city council and a bit of that atmosphere from the mayor. And I mean, does it really make you want to go out and take on that job? I mean, that's a miserable, tough job. And no matter what you do, you end up in no-win situations. You get somebody in your face and getting too rough. And if you overreact, suddenly you're the next YouTube video of the week and you're getting pilloried. At the same time, if you ignore somebody committing a crime and they go further, or ignore somebody who's showing signs of it and they go further and hurt somebody, you'll get it for that. And it's a difficult role to be in. And I think that leads to some of the issues when police act out and do some inappropriate actions. It's because when your morale's low, that's when you're going to be tense, you're stressed, and you might not properly respond to a circumstance or situation when you could have, because the police are wrong at some point. So let's look further. Why are there anger issues with police? Why do they go to physical force so quickly sometimes when perhaps there could have been other ways of getting out of it? And we got to look broader. But I mean, and I've talked about that before. I can't think of a more ridiculous way to deal with that, though, than to defund them. We could, change some of the areas of training, change some of the ways that, they're supported when they're out in the field, when they're working. But I can't think of any worse way to address the problem than to actually directly cut their funding. But that's a spiteful approach. That's some people who have a beef with policing in general and in itself. I mean, if we had problems with firefighters, if houses were burning down, they weren't getting there fast enough or whatever, would anybody propose it? I know what we should do. We should defund the firefighters. I don't think so. Well, that's about as logical as the defund the police movement is. And I mean, hey, I'm a fiscal conservative. I know you don't solve every problem by just giving them more money either. No, you've got to make sure it's well spent and properly spent. But they're not going to get better for having less money. As we said, as Councillor McLean said, they're already short-staffed. They've already got challenges going on. Getting on their case further, I think almost some humiliating behavior being demonstrated towards them. I mean, ridiculous reactive things, as I talked about the other day because they were wearing a pin because some people misinterpreted that as some militia support. It was ridiculous. And okay, fine. The Twitter trolls and the twits and the morons out there going on about a symbol on a police pin. That's not to be too unexpected. There's a lot of stupid people online and they love to share it with us. But they should have been called out very quickly by some people in authority. Where was the response saying, hey, you guys, cut it out. You're twits. That's not what that is whatsoever. But the police were kind of left hanging with this false rumor about them taking part in militias and crap. Without any counterpoint being made. And again, no wonder the police feel, they have morale issues. They aren't feeling very good when they're going out to work. And, speaking again of mental health issues and challenges, that happens on the police end of things too. They got a tough job, the stuff they deal with. Some of the stress, them paramedics, that symbol you can see there, that's a pin. It's worn for people to take special crowd control training. And I don't know how they deal with a lot of that stress. I see that downtown. They respond to emergency situations, and paramedics do. I wrote a column last fall on an incident I encountered on the way into the office. I ran across an overdose of a young man. I don't think he made it. I still don't know. And it shook me up. It still shakes me up now. I'm just a wreck over it. I was at that time. And it still disturbs me now, very much so. Now, these guys are on the ground. They're dealing with that every bloody day. They're seeing this. They're seeing people killing themselves with these drugs. They're seeing people in dire situations. They're seeing domestic abuse situations, you name it. And then they get crapped on by their bosses. They get crapped on by the public in general. So again, I'm not saying they're perfect, but boy, we've got to really try to look at this in a broader picture rather than lashing out. Somebody's saying change the training. It shouldn't take 6 officers to take down one person. I'm no expert in those things. If there were 6 people in mushy, nasty, middle-aged shape like me, it probably would take 6 of me to do it. But it depends on how you look at it, right? I mean, I would think if you have more hands-on, this is just uneducated talk coming from me. I'm prone to that, I guess. Maybe you could do it more gently, potentially, because you don't need to go and get as rough to restrain somebody if it was just 2 people. I don't know. That's an area of expertise for physical confrontation that I don't want to get into, because I'll probably give you guys bad information on it. But the bottom line is there's room for better training. Absolutely, there's room for better training. The goal is to avoid conflict. And just to show some of the bad attitude they get too, they're on social media. And the next guest I'm going to get to quickly here. There was some discussion. Somebody showed a picture of the police with the vehicle in front of the march the other day. Say, look at that! If they want to stop this, they should stop sanctioning the march. They shouldn't be in there leading the parade. Okay, guys, they weren't leading the parade. What it is trained control. They're making sure that there aren't traffic issues. They're making sure that there aren't safety issues. And they're riding in front of it for that reason. They're clearing the path to avoid conflict. That's their job. Their job is to avoid the conflict in the first place. They were doing their job right, yet there's still hammerheads on social media giving them crap for it. As I said in response, and I only said it tongue in cheek, the police should just take the whole weekend off and really give these guys a taste of what would happen if they weren't there at all. But that would end up very badly. So that was tongue-in-cheek suggestion. Not that they're going to listen to me and take the weekend off anyways, but it would be too painful a lesson to throw out on what's a very delicate situation. And I'm really actually quite worried about what's going to happen this weekend. So let's get on and bring in onto some broader budget issues. Let's talk some dollars and cents and bring in Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Kevin Lacey, to chat for us for a little bit here on some financial issues and the debt clock and all that good stuff. Hey there, how's it going?
How are you, Corey?
Oh, good. Good to see you.
It's great to join you.
Great. So, there's always a lot of things to cover. We're in some interesting financial times right now. But maybe I'll start off with something we've seen a lot of. The newly branded debt clock is on the roll for you guys, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. You had to get a new one because you actually ran out of digits on the last one. That's astounding.
It's a true story. So the debt clock started in 1990 when the debt was going up under Brian Mulroney. And so the Taxpayers Federation of the day and its members decided to start the national debt clock, which was literally what it sounds. It was just a pickup truck, and somebody had an old trailer and they slapped some numbers on it, and off we went across the country to talk about how much the debt was going up and to try to do something to bring it down. and the other thing that was going on at the time was there was the debate over the GST. And so you had this new tax and this high debt, and we were trying to do something, trying to change the country. So it's funny, like our organization started with that, and we started kind of on a failure, but we're still going today. And the debt today is over $1 trillion, which is why we had to have a new debt clock. Just to put that in perspective, that's about $400 million every single day that the debt will go up. And just in, Corey, the amount of time that we're going to talk today, that debt will go up almost $2 million. So this is a big number that Canadians need to be aware of. And it's so big that we find that the only way to really convince average Canadians of the challenges that we're in is to show it to them. And that's what the debt clock is all about.
Yeah, and I always liked that even back in the 90s when it came out. I loved it because it gave people an option, because you'd see those numbers just spinning on that thing, on a digital thing, just to give people an idea of how fast this thing is climbing. And you need that to make a mental, to grasp just how much dollars are going into the hole on your behalf right now.
And, and that's right. And if anyone wants to see what the debt clock would look like kind of in real time, you can go to debtclock.ca, which is our website that essentially runs the debt clock, both on the web and also with the truck. But we're going to be traveling across Alberta. We just finished a tour in British Columbia. Looking forward to being in Lethbridge on Tuesday morning, and going to Medicine Hat and Calgary and Red Deer and Edmonton and Lloydminster to really bring this message home that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are spending far too much of our money. We're going far too deep in debt too fast, and something needs to happen to change it. And so we're going to be going the tour, and you can check out our website. If anybody wants to see it in real time, please come out. They're public, and we look forward to seeing as many supporters on the road as we can possibly meet. Our national director, Franco Terrazzano, has been on the show many times. We'll be traveling as well, and we're looking forward to seeing as many Albertans and bringing the message home.
Yeah, and I see Nico's brought it up there, so we can see that clock spinning away there with those numbers, and boy, it's well into, you didn't just go a little bit past that trillion mark. It's already well into that. And as I was talking a bit about the optics, like something I've always tried to use, because people can't envision it, us normal people, and how much money that is. If you took an analogy I use, a stack of $1,000 bills that made $1 million and it was 6 inches tall, that's a lot of money. $1 million is still a lot of money to most of us, anyways, unless you're a cabinet minister or something. And
Preston Manning used to often have the joke that, how do you know that a baby's okay when it comes out of the womb? It's crying because he's found out that he's over $30,000 in debt, which is exactly what's going on.
Exactly, yeah. And and that $1 million is 6 inches tall. If it was $1 billion, that would be 500 feet tall. Like that's how much a billion is, because you got to drive home to people how much a billion is. Now think about $1 trillion. That's 1,000 times that. And that's what we're in the hole right now. That's disturbing. But we can't relate to that. We think of our, $500 car payments or a $2,000 mortgage payment. It's just the scope of those numbers gets too almost surreal to us. So it's great that you guys get out there and give such a visual, demonstration to see what they're all about.
Yeah, thanks. And we're going to be the first week of April is supposed to be the federal budget. So it's got there's a reason why it's now as well, is because we want to be able to go into that federal budget and have an actual debate about some of the spending that is going on, whether or not the Liberals are spending our money responsibly. Because the Liberal government loves to talk about the spending and what you're going to get for it. And there's a cost, and it's the cost that is often missed in the whole debate. Yeah,
well, and April 1st, there's also going to be another event that you guys have been reminding us all about quite regularly, and I appreciate you reminding it. And the carbon tax is going up yet again.
Yeah, look, we're going to be facing some pretty big obstacles come April 1st. And the crazy thing about the federal carbon tax is it's going to go up on April 1st. We're going to pay here in Alberta about 11 cents of carbon tax on each liter of gasoline. But it is legislated to go up until 2030. So it will continue to go up as time goes on. And, when the government brought this piece of legislation, they thought, no one's going to care, a few cents here and there. But given the price of gas, This is a massive hit on Canadians. And the Kenny government has gone forward and eliminated the provincial gas tax, which will save us about 15 cents. But Premier Kenny is right. He went out and said, look, like, we're doing our part. What's the federal government doing on theirs? And at the same time, one will come off, one will go up. And there's only one taxpayer, which means we're going to get hammered anyway. And that's why I think the carbon tax is an important debate. I think the second element of the debate is, what is the carbon tax supposed to be doing? Like, you know, I think often lost in this, we talk about the costs and the benefits and all this, but what is this money going towards? Because certainly some of the things such as the Paris Climate Agreement, all this kind of stuff, I mean, it's having virtually no impact on that. So even the rationale for the carbon tax doesn't seem to make any sense. So we have higher costs, no rationale, and at a time when Canadians and Albertans are really struggling. And maybe just to finish off on this point, Corey, like, we're an energy province here in Alberta. Like, the oil is here, like it's beneath our feet. Yet we're paying these high prices because the government won't let us get at it. It's a crazy situation. It's one thing for in central Canada, they want to talk about energy and all that, but we have it. It's right here. And yet it's being kept from us. We're paying these high costs as a result.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous and bizarre, and there just hasn't even been much discussion of trying to bring more into market. I mean, aside from locally, which is just terribly unusual in the world's in an energy crisis. So I appreciate you coming on and talking to us today about that, and we're looking forward to watching that tour. And as you said, it's timely. They'll get to Ottawa just at the right time. Where can people find more information about what you're doing here in Alberta and nationally?
Sure, you can find it at taxpayer.ca. And that'll have all the information about the debt clock and as well other things that we're working on. And if you just want to show the debt clock, and even if you want to show your friends and neighbors and communities that we can't get to, then please pass along the debt clock and show people exactly how much money we're spending and how deep the debt is. That's the way we're going to create change, is by educating and changing minds.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming in to check in with us today, Kevin, and keep up the good work. And I'm certain we'll be talking again soon.
Great. Thanks again. Appreciate you having me.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. So yes, that's Kevin Lacey, the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Yeah, if nothing else, those guys always have lots to talk about because we're always getting more and more tax abuse. So let's talk about some other news items. Let's talk about a little bit of sports for a moment. I see an item here. Leah Thomas took control in the final 100 yards of a 500-yard freestyle and made history. Thursday is the first known transgender woman to win an NCAA swimming championship. That's nice. You know, I would have thought, because I looked it up, and I guess she's started some hormone treatment and everything, but nothing else has been done. I just would have thought that having those nuts dragging behind the suit would have caused drag and actually put her at a disadvantage, but apparently not. She's still leading the pack. But we've actually seen some protests. This has been terrible, guys. You know, this is a matter of delusion we're getting into. I mean, we want to be accepting, of course, and you know, we've come a long ways. It used to be terrible. I mean, it was actually illegal for people to be gay not that long ago, in a relative sort of sense. But we've come to this point of trying to deny biological realities now. In sports. I mean, it's clear as we're seeing transgender women coming out and dominating a large number of events, and it is so unfair, you know, for the other women who have been working so hard and trying to come up, and they're at a disadvantage because these people were physiologically put at an advantage by birth. I mean, let's just keep it fair, guys. Why does it have to push into that? I really do want to trans rights, absolutely. I want to respect a person to be who they are and enjoy who they are and live their life as fully as they can. Change things how you will, but we've got to get realistic at some points. And when we're talking about these sports, this is ridiculous. It really is. And I don't think it's helping with other trans people who don't want to get caught in the middle of that. They just want to live their lives and be okay. But some of these activists and others, and I think there was a picture of this one. There's this Leah Thomas. I mean, standing there in that woman's suit, but there was for you didn't think for a second that this was a biological woman, because, like it or not, we are physiologically different without at least going to efforts through hormone therapy and surgery and things to change it. And somebody tweeted, geez, at least try, because you didn't glance for a second. This was somebody who was certainly of a different build, and it's not reasonable to have that going on. It's too bad this battle has to happen. I mean, it's just such a departure from realism and a bit of common sense, and it's not doing anybody any favors whatsoever. But here we are. Let's see. Oh yeah, getting back. So I should frame things up for the weekend. I will be going out, to observe at these, and the Standard's going to be covering the protests downtown Calgary. Hopefully, it doesn't go too nuts. So a news item, with that was some of the fights that were going on in City Hall. And Councillor McLean wasn't a part of that, but the real goofy left that they have there, and there's a number of them. There's the two Courtneys, Penner and whatever the other fella is, and Giancarlo Carra, who's always been a part of the loopy left. He came that close to losing in the last election. It's too bad it didn't quite happen. And it's very clear there, but there was actually one councillor who wanted some compromise, say, well, why don't we just listen to them? Why don't we hold a town hall, talk to people, let them vent it out? And they went nuts. I'm not inviting hate. I'm not inviting racism into City Hall. These are the people running the city. What an embarrassment. What a terrible way to try and govern things with this divisive crap. And that was the word out of Penner saying, I will not allow hate to come into these chambers. You know what? When you're calling your constituents racist with no basis, you're the one spreading the hate, Penner. You are. The hate's already in the chambers. You and the other Courtney and the rest, you're BS because you differ with them, and you will slander them, call them racists, call them bigots. Cut it out. Cut it out. All right, that's got my blood pressure up. Before I get going, as I said, the reminder, which will get everybody else's blood pressure up, I do have Jean Charest coming on Monday. We're going to talk to him about his leadership bid for the Conservative Party of Canada. And I'm going to have Melissa Ambarkey. She's been on the show before. She's an Indigenous person who works in the oil sector, the oil and gas sector, and she's with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. This is why I got in the show too. My tongue is failing on me at the end of a week of babbling at all you poor souls. And she's going to respond to all those celebrities who have lined up yet again, the usual suspects, Leonardo DiCaprio and all of them, demanding an end to the Coastal GasLink. And these celebrities sort of take it upon themselves, saying that they are speaking for Canadian First Nations people, and they aren't whatsoever. So it's good to have somebody who knows something about it, who is actually directly tied to these things, to push back and tell these, I can't put words in her mouth, but I suspect she's going to tell those celebrities to get stuffed. She's certainly been doing so on Twitter and on social media already. So that's going to be a really good conversation. And of course, I got a whole week full of good guests lined up to talk to next week. And I'm sure I'll have a lot of stuff to report on and rant about. So thank you all for joining me all week. And thanks for joining me today. Send me those questions and ideas. I do welcome all of them. I'm sure some people send me some stuff, tell me where to go. It doesn't bother me that much. If it gets it out of your system, go for it. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, westernstandardonline.com, and subscribe to the YouTube, the Facebook, all of those channels so you can get those alerts when those specials happen. We could be live streaming potentially from the demonstrations tomorrow. You'll see that pop up if that happens. And that's about it. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you all on Monday.